So I think it's about 2 weeks since the main plant here was germinating. And the two other companion plants, that is the peas and the radishes, they came as this one was popping out, so I think it was a little bit more than a week ago, and they were seeded straight in, no pre-germination or anything like that. The main plant, this is just an example, but you can pretty much use, any nutrients hungry and fairly big plant is what you would want in the middle, the one that needs the most light. And then you have to just simply adapt. The strategy I approach with is having those within the first ring, closest proximity, be a shallow, small, quick-growing plants. My particular favorite is radishes. I want them. So, I don't necessarily need to take these right off the bat, but the idea here is that for the time being, you don't really want too much nutrients in the soil while your main plant is stretching out its roots, because if it has enough nutrients, it simply won't be searching, and that means that your roots will be smaller. So it made sense to me that, for example, shallow plants like the radishes here that don't go very deep would be a good plant to have by, because as you see here, they wouldn't really pose much of a competition. You can eat them straight as they are, and in the process you will be taking a bit more nutrients from the surrounding area, which, if the concept still applies, it ought to be encouraging this one to go quicker with the roots. Again, there's not much competition to find against this one. Even if you were to let this stay, and I will, because I'm just going to comment thin about a little bit here and have for my meals. They, even as they start getting thicker, they wouldn't necessarily compete too much. However, by the time the roots of the main plant has started going through, this is a 10-liter bucket, so still a bit to go. But even if you were to be allowing, by the time the roots have, you're fairly confident that the roots have gone through most of the bucket, and you're going to fertilize, that's when you want to at least get rid of the radishes. But I would also perhaps consider the tertiary plant. In this case, that is the peas. The reason I applied peas is because, well, they're very easy to grow. They are also kind of tasty. I just snip like that, and then I can have it on my... I like these and radishes wrapped in cheese with mayo, for example. That's one way to put it. And another thing I like about using peas is that as they're growing in this vegetative stage, they would be making nodules that if you snip them off like this, they will die, and then the nitrogen, because they have nitrogen fixing bacteria with them, and you would want to kill these off before you get into flowering mode anyways, because there's going to be a lot of adaptation to the soil for the main plant, which is going to adversely affect the peas, and you're probably going to struggle a bit with getting them to actually produce anything else but the greens. The same goes for the radishes. Radishes perhaps even more so, because as you progress and you will need more light, you are probably going to be increasing the temperature. And you can already see on this one here that I picked, it's, let's see if we can get a focus, it's already getting a little bit, oh yeah, this didn't show too well, but you can see it's slightly hairy, and that's usually a sign of it bolting. And that shouldn't be surprising, because we're having close between 20 and 25 centigrades here. In other words, as this one grows bigger and the roots grow out, you will naturally want to just get rid of these. But in the meanwhile, while the soil space is not used, you actually want to have them here. You don't have to be too concerned about the outer layer here. Like this one might actually be rooting out on this side, but by the time you're snipping these off, it's also at the same time growing downwards. So kind of consider it like an inverted cone. And so yes, it will reach the ends here, but there are a lot more to be fitting down. And a final note on soil. You may have noticed that I've hilled these. I've done it to all of the main plants as it was growing. So it may look short. There's another reason, and I will end on that one. But there's no point really hilling beyond a certain point. Like a certain point, you don't really need to hill anymore, because it does take time for the roots to kind of come out, at least on this plant, for the roots to come out of the stem. And at the same time, the roots are to be growing downwards. So further hilling doesn't make any sense. I tend to, once the real leaves, this is actually not a real leaf, these would be real leaves. But like these, shall we call them baby leaves? That's pretty much where I, just as a rule of thumb, tend to put the hilling line. And now that they are not growing or stretching any further up, the idea is basically just to take, you optimize the last part of the soil by just mulching it with coal on the top. As you can see, I have done otherwise. So I'm just going to be filling up on the coal to cover the surface, and then the plant will be able to utilize the soil further down. And then, finally, because this video got way longer than I intended, I got on a ramble. If you're doing this indoors, you don't have to, but I would recommend that you aim for this bright blue light that has about 6,000 kelvins. The reason for that is because if you're using the red ones, the plants you're using here are going to stretch, and that will take more space, which can be, an issue. Of course it is, because that's really the main challenge of an indoor growing up. And if you're looking for extra greens, as I am in this case with both radishes and peas, this goes even further. So that's why I have like a very dense nodes here. You see, the lamp is not really that close, all things considered, but it is the brightness frequency that makes the plant put out more nodes. That is to say, every time you see branches pointing out, that's where, in this case, you'll be having seeds or buds or whatever you're growing. But it just generally means, like with the peas and whatever, they will grow more green and leafy and shorter and stubbier. It's probably something else I was supposed to mention, but I fear I'll be looping. So yeah, that's my indoor companion hobby for the time being. I'm probably going to be expanding on this, not necessarily with the rudealis here, but oh yeah, I should point out that I need to follow a certain time schedule loosely when it comes to this, because my main plant here is auto flowering, so it will blossom regardless of how I alter the lighting or anything like that. If you had a bigger plant, this, you could probably be altering quite a bit, but since this one will be following a flowering schedule, I will need to either kill off or adapt the others, and I don't see how I can feasibly adapt them. Ooh, look how big that leaf actually got. Yeah, bye.